Hello, lovely friends. Today we're chatting planning, all things planning and the importance with planning with the love of my life, my husband, Nate, Raw Natty N8. He's going to join us. We're going to chat a little bit about planning and the importance of planning, why we need to do it. It can be a boring thing to plan, but it is one of the keys to success. So we're going to chat about that a little bit today. Don't forget to go check out the Vegan Health Bundle. Link is in my bio on Instagram, or it's in the description box below if you're watching on YouTube. Get the Vegan Health Bundle. You pay only $49 and you get to download 83 different contributions valued at nearly $5,600. So you just pay the $49 and you get a link where you can download all the stuff, including 8 things from Nate and myself. We've got the brand new Align and Awaken Affirmation Meditation Challenge. Nate's brand new smoothie ebook is in there. Tales from the Tailgate, our Raw on the Road ebook, the Burger Book. We've got Meal Plan Volume 3, Make It Raw Volume 3, Holiday Menu Volume 3, and you get access to our raw food meal prep class where we teach how to make breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 2 people on a raw diet in an hour. So if you want to watch that, get the bundle because you get access to that. Link is in the bio or in the description box below. And we're just waiting for my love to hop on here and then we can chat. It's not coming up. He's in the other room. It's so funny. We're really going to go live together. Maybe refresh your Instagram. So interesting. But yeah, we want to chat a little bit about planning today, how important it is for planning, and why we need to do it. On another note too, to go along with planning is Noreen says, is the 1-hour class available in the group membership? Yes. It's the one that we did in, I believe, in October. So if you check the 2024 folder, you'll be able to watch that because it's in there. For those in the community, hi, babe.
Hey, babe.
You're looking good. Look at those curls.
Oh, man. Let me shut the door.
Okay. Those curls are looking awesome. Yes. I know. We're in the same house, so the noise travels.
All right.
Hello.
There. Now I can hear a little better. Okay. I was getting like feedback from. Yeah.
I could hear you too. So fun. Oh man. Thank you for joining me for live.
Oh, this is my pleasure, babe. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Of course. And I'm sure the people love to see us together. Even though we're in the same house. Yeah. And by the way, thank you for the smoothie that you made today on your live. It's really good.
Yeah, the internet's really funky. So hopefully this works out. Like you're all super choppy and our internet went down yesterday from the crazy weather. So hopefully it'll work out.
Okay, cool. Yes.
You can hear me okay?
Yep. Totally. Okay. I see you okay too. I see all the details of my love.
Okay, cool.
Oh, you're the best. So planning, want to chat a little bit about planning today. What would be, what would be like your top thoughts about planning? Like some of your best tips or why we should plan. Share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when it comes to food, right, I presume that you're talking about, I feel that the best way to go is to do the meals, like write out how long you're going for. Like when we take off for a 5-6 day trip, camping, we're going to write down what we're going to be having for breakfast, what we're going to be having for lunch, and what we're going to be having for dinner for every single day. And of course, we're pretty good with, say, dialing in like breakfast we're going to be eating the day we leave at home, right? So that really helps because then, and of course we're doing this before the trip. So we have the meals that we want to make. And then, it's easy to just go to the store, get the stuff that you need and do any of the prep work before we go. Like if we're going to do wraps for a couple of the lunches and maybe one of the dinners. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing that really, really helps is having, like, thinking about it ahead of time. Like, what are we going to have on Tuesday? Ooh, what do we want to have on Wednesday? Oh, and Thursday morning we're going to be driving home, so we can just do fruit, and then, you know, it's only going to take us a couple hours to get home or whatever, right? I feel like that's probably the best and most important or impactful step, is planning out the actual meals.
Yeah, definitely. What would you say about planning out your day? Like, say you're at home, what would you find is the best that you like the most
Mm.
for planning your day? Like, you know, say somebody's like either has their 9 to 5 or they have their families or whatever. What would you say would be best for their planning?
Yeah, so say if they have a 9 to 5, um, I like just prepping it in the morning. How we'll do, you know, like when I was working on the farm, you know, we'd get up in the morning, like you'd prep up everything, and that's what's cool is that's actually in the bundle. One of our contributions is the prep for the entire day, and that's really powerful because for two people, and of course you'd have to adjust if you had kids, you know, but for two people you can do breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the entire day, and it takes about an hour. So I feel that that's a really good way to go, because then you don't have to think about lunch, you don't have to think about dinner. All that stuff's really ready to go. You've got snacks in your bag. So what we would do is we would make the smoothies first and foremost, drink the smoothies while we're chopping up the salad for lunch and the different ingredients. And of course, that's another trick too, is like keeping certain things separate, not putting your cucumbers and tomatoes in with your lettuce all at one time. I know some people like to do the salads in a jar. That's kind of cool. But yeah, I feel that prepping everything up first and foremost in the morning is really nice because it takes the thinking out of it completely. Um, but what I would do when I was working at the hospital is I would just bring my blender. And now I did have the plan of what I was going to be making that particular day. So I had the ingredients that I needed to make what I wanted to make. Say if I was doing the French dressing, which was pretty much like the classic everyday thing, I would bring my dates, my lemon, my garlic with me, you know, seasoning, smoked paprika, and I would also bring my Vitamix. That way I could blend the dressing fresh at work. Plus it was cool because, you know, where I was, we had a fridge and a freezer. So I was able to put frozen fruit in the freezer and make a smoothie for, you know, say if I wanted a smoothie for a snack, or maybe that day I just wasn't really feeling like a salad, I could have a smoothie. So those are the two different things. Like either you bring your stuff with you and make it at work, which can be a little bit more time consuming and a little bit more involving. And that's like a little extra. So the best I feel like is just having everything ready, prepped up in the morning, and then you have your snacks. And a lot of times I wouldn't bring my dinner salad with me when I was working at the hospital. Same when I was working at the farm. I would just have my lunch. But when I got home, it was simple. Lunch or dinner was already prepped. If we're doing a salad, if we were doing something a little bit different, a little bit more special, you know, you'd plan for that. Like say if we're doing burgers or, you know, wraps, of course, are amazing. We didn't have the wraps at that point in time, but yeah, I don't know. I would say that. What would you say?
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. I think it's a great way to do it. Like you and I know, we know when we get that prep work done in the morning, it's like so nice to have lunch ready. And yeah, blending a double batch and chopping extra because it's like you only wash the blender the one time for two things, so you don't have to blend again the next day. It's like just make a double batch. And if you have a vacuum blender, and actually, as I was uploading videos onto YouTube because I'm putting these lives on YouTube as well, I saw John Kohler had a video talking about a new blender called Blend Tide. And it's like this like less expensive version of a vacuum blender. So it'll be interesting to watch that video because, you know, when our Vitamix dies, what are we going to do, right? Eventually
Yeah.
it's going to go.
Yeah.
Or our vacuum blender or biochefs, you know, once they disappear or die, like what are we going to do? So vacuum blending, the reason I said that is because vacuum blending your dressings, you can make like a double or even a triple batch. And if you blend it under vacuum and then seal it under vacuum, then you've got like 2 to even 3 days worth of dressings that you don't have to make. So you could move your food prep down to like 2 to 3 times a week, and you have your dressings done and ready to go, just like jarred up in their own individual jars. So you know this one's Monday, this one's Tuesday, this one's Wednesday, and you don't have to worry about it. All you have to do is chop your veggies, and you can always chop double the amount of veggies. So if you're standing there at the counter anyway, you might as well chop double the amount of veggies.
Yeah.
Right? Get them in those containers. I also wanted to ask your opinion on scheduling yourself in. I want to hear your thoughts on how important that is, because that's something that I think is really important. And obviously we're human too. We need to work on scheduling ourselves in as well. So I wanted to hear a little more of your thoughts on that, because that's like the second part of planning. Like you can plan all you want, but if you don't schedule it in, it's not going to happen or might not.
Yeah. That's a huge one, scheduling yourself in. And actually, yeah, we were just talking about this the other day, like with our workouts, like, oh, we need to actually put those in the calendar, because then it's in the calendar. Like if we have a meeting, say like this live was scheduled in the calendar, like why aren't our workouts scheduled in there, right? Because then we're not going to miss it. So yeah, that's really huge, you know, and I guess that would really, it would depend on what it is you're trying to schedule in. Like, you know, when you say scheduling yourself in, like, what does that mean? What are we scheduling in for? You know, it could be like you're saying, you know, or I was saying like the workout, but the meals, I mean, typically, you know, you're eating a meal, the standard times, right? You have your breakfast, you have your lunch, you have your dinner, you have your snacks. And I don't know, like, I mean, I picture that could be pretty cool in the beginning to schedule those in, like,
especially if someone usually skips meals or isn't used to eating.
yeah,
Like
right.
you know, they're used to just working right away through, and then they're like starving and craving and everything because they haven't fed their body. So sometimes people need that reminder while they build the habits, and then their body is like, oh, you know, I'm normally hungry at noon because I normally eat at noon, because the body adapts to what we do to it, right?
Yeah, and I guess too, like with nowadays, with a lot of people maybe working remotely, that could be really, really impactful, because yeah, if they are someone who doesn't eat, you know, breakfast or lunch, they skip those, and then at dinner they're famished, then something like scheduling that in with a little alarm, like, oh, it's time to actually eat, like I need to eat. And then it's interesting too how the body works, where if you're not eating breakfast and you're never eating breakfast, then your body isn't really that hungry in the morning. You're like, I just don't do breakfast. I don't really eat breakfast. I'm not big on breakfast. But if you start to eat a little bit more for breakfast, say you schedule yourself in, you're like, the alarm goes off, like, oh, it's time to make my smoothie. You don't really feel like making your smoothie. You're not really that hungry. But then you start to have that smoothie. You're like, I'm going to give myself a week. I'm going to do a week challenge. Just make a smoothie every morning, or have some fresh fruit every morning. Or maybe you do like, you know, overnight chia pudding or something like that. It's interesting how the body will start to crave that every single day. You're like, you start to get that appetite back, the adaptive thermogenics, right? So
Exactly.
that's pretty huge. I feel that could be really, you know, beneficial for people who don't eat. Yeah, and you know, like I said, for us, like we need to schedule our actual workouts in, so it's in the calendar and we're not missing it. Because if it's not scheduled, you miss it a lot of times, unless it's just a habitual routine. And that's where I was thinking, like, I don't really know about scheduling in meals. I never did that, because if I was working, you have your 2 15-minute breaks and your half-hour lunch, or your 2 15-minute breaks and your hour lunch, or however the day goes if you're working a 9-to-5 style. So that's kind of a reminder, right? You're like, ooh, it's break time. Like, I'm kind of hungry. I'm going to have my smoothie. And, you know, of course, talking about vacuum blending, that's really great, because if you blend your smoothie in the morning that you're drinking, and then you blend a smoothie that, you know, you do a double batch and you vacuum seal it, then, you know, you can have it for your break time, and it's not going to taste any different because it's under vacuum. It's definitely going to taste way more fresh than if it wasn't vacuum sealed. You don't need to have a vacuum blender, I would say, necessarily. Like, that's going to be next level and a lot better if you can. But yeah, definitely it's important to schedule ourselves in, and you think about just not even meal time. Like, we have our self-care Sunday, so it's scheduled that we're going to go out into nature every single Sunday, hike a different trail, especially living where we live, downtown Las Vegas. It's loud. There's a lot of lights. It's not necessarily a natural setting that I feel that we as humans are really designed to live in. So that's really important, to schedule in those times for yourself to where you're actually, you know, doing the healthier things, or, spending that time with yourself. So yeah, it could be really beneficial in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and scheduling too, like your bedtime routine, like, the alarm goes off at 7:30. It's like, oh, drop what you're doing. It's time to get ready for bed. Or scheduling in your food prep. Like if it's like every morning at 6 a.m., you show up. Like it's so interesting how we show up for other people and we show up for deadlines, but we don't show up for ourselves, right? Like, we're like, oh, we have like a dentist appointment, or we have this meeting with the accountant, or we have to meet our friend to go on this adventure at noon on Sunday or whatever, like we have these appointments and meetings and we show up to those.
Yeah.
But then when we schedule ourselves in, we're like, yeah, well, we got this other thing to do. And, like we don't put as much value on it, and we should.
We should.
It's one of those things that's just like an ongoing challenge.
Constantly evolving. I saw that Janice said in here that she would carry a bag of clementines, and that's something that you and I would do as well, or like a cherry tomatoes or grapes. And that is a really great thing to practice as well, is always having some sort of fruit with you everywhere you go. Even if you're like, I'm not going to eat this, but I'm going to have it just in case. Of course, clementines are great because they're pretty hardy. Apples are really good too, so you throw them in your bag. It's kind of funny, the reel. I feel like I saw a reel or something at some time where it was like, I don't know if it was, I think it was an apple, not a banana. Like they got the apple, they're like, all right, come on, apple, you're coming with me to work. And they put it in their bag, and then they don't eat it. And then they come home and they're like, oh, apple, I didn't eat you. I'll put it back on the counter. And then they're like, oh, let's go and travel again,
Right? It's like taking my apple on its daily adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
And then snacks too, I think, are really important too, because sometimes, we get a little hungry throughout the day, especially if we're eating a high raw diet or an all raw diet. You tend to, unless you have like a massive meal, a big huge salad or a full Vitamix pitcher worth of smoothie. It's nice to have those snacks with you.
Definitely is. Yeah. We got a comment in here. Oh my goodness, just tuned in. Nate's hair.
Hey.
Look at that hair. I know. That Morocco.
I took a shower this morning. I didn't shampoo and condition this morning, but I did put in a little leave-in conditioner. And it really makes a big difference.
Yeah. I know. His hair is so awesome. I love it. Someone was asking earlier about the vacuum blending as like a universal vacuum blender. There isn't like one that attaches to all different kinds of blenders, because each blender company has different bases, different blade systems, and different motors and all that kind of stuff. So honestly, right now, I think the one that fits on the Vitamix is the Void system one. They have like an attachment that fits on, I think, BlendTech and Vitamix, but I don't think it does Ninja. Our best suggestion would be to just invest in a vacuum blender itself. It's not like an attachment that goes on your current blender, but it's its own entity of a blender. So if you did want to get into vacuum blender, Blend Tide, New Wave, Dynapro, Void Systems, and Kuvings. There's 5 different companies that I know of off the top of my head that are doing vacuum blending things. So those are all options as well. But yeah, on the scheduling thing, I wanted to, or you were talking about, having work be like your schedule. So like, when it's lunchtime, you go and you eat your lunch or whatever. And then self-employed people, when they're at home, it can be a lot more challenging. And when I first quit my 9 to 5 and I started doing my freelance photography full time, it was really interesting because when I was deciding to quit, I'm like, I'm going to have so much time. I'm going to be able to eat, at these times, and it's going to be so great and everything. And people would message me and they're like, oh, well, Lissa, you're so lucky that you work from home. It's so much easier. And I'm like, actually, in a way, it was actually easier having the schedule and the routine of having a 9 to 5, because then you're in a routine. It's
Right.
it's a scheduled routine that you have to do. You get your lunch break at a certain amount of time and other people are depending on you. But when you're self-employed, you do whatever you want. It's like you skip lunch, you work through it, you wake up whatever time you need to or whatever. Like, it's such a different thing. So when people are like, oh, well, you're so lucky, I'm like, well, I wouldn't say it's like lucky, because it just comes with different challenges. And they are more challenging, because when I first went full time myself with my photography, I was about probably like, it was a year before I went raw. And I thought that I was going to, have all this time in the world to like make healthy food and be healthy. And I wouldn't have cravings because I would be, the kitchen's right there. I could make whatever. But that year that I was working for myself was the worst year diet wise for me in my entire life. I ate the worst food. I thought I would have all this time, but somehow I didn't. And, when you're working a lot, you're just grabbing to go food. So yeah, it might look like people who work from home have all this time, but they just have different challenges. It's just different. So it really is about scheduling yourself in, making sure that you have those meal times and have the meal prep, which is probably the most important part, is to have a meal that you can eat at the meal time, right? If you don't have a meal, you're going to wing it. You're just going to guess. You're going to be like, you're going to choose based on your habits and what sounds good at the time, what's convenient, what's whatever, what your coworkers are eating. And it's going to be harder to make choices when you don't plan, when you don't schedule it in. So
I know, I'm thinking like, dang, we should probably set aside some time and do our schedule too, because we don't have a set time where we make dinner, and dinner is typically kind of varies in anywhere between 4:30 and 7 sometimes, right? And of course, like in a perfect world, in our perfect mind of what would be the perfect world would be, as far as dinner times go, it would be so nice to be like having dinner ready at 4:30 to 4:45, to where we're eating and we're done eating by 5:30. And then, it gives us a little bit of time to relax for a moment, and then maybe have a scoop of ice cream, or, whatever, if we want to have like a piece of our cacao chocolate or something. And then we're done by 6. We're not eating anything after 6, because I definitely sleep better. I notice that I sleep better when I don't have anything in my stomach, after 7. And of course, there has been sometimes we've eaten as late as 8:30, and, we might be staying up a little later that night. So I know it's interesting, because we can always give like the best advice, like, oh, this would be the most optimum way. But a lot of times we need to implement these things ourselves. So,
I know,
for whoever's tuning in out there, it's not like we're over here like, yeah, we've got everything completely dialed in. But I think that is a good point that you make. Being home, working for yourself, it would be really beneficial to schedule it in where you have an alarm, reminds yourself, because you just get into your work. And of course, both you and I would love to just be served. Like, here, somebody sticks a smoothie in my hand, or here's a bowl of celery and some dates, then it's just takes all the thinking out of it. But I know, scheduling yourself in is really important. And I can see how we should probably implement that along with our exercise routine too.
right.
We have to schedule in those workouts. We've been really good lately, and it feels really good. And it's interesting, because the day just slips by, and it's, it's easy to just get to a point where you're so hungry, and then of course, if you're not really dedicated or, fully focused in on like, I really want to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be somebody who is a whole food plant-based eater or a raw vegan, then you could definitely take some turns into some different ways. Like our friend Chris, right? He was like, I almost went and got Domino's pizza, and he's all, but then I remembered, oh, I have that wrap. And he ate the wrap, and he was like, man, I felt so much better. And I'm like, dude, like, don't go to Domino's. But that's what we do, like if we haven't planned and we haven't prepared something and we don't have anything with us, we get hungry, and it's so easy. Everything is so easy to access different kinds of funk out there. Just so much funky funk. Just drive through, get a bag, you're driving home, you're eating, and yeah, I know that's not the way to go, especially, after a decade or 2 decades or, whatever. It adds up.
It does.
It's so huge.
Yeah, it really does add up. And that's another thing too. It's like the negative habits add up, but the positive ones add up too. So like shifting away from being like, oh, you're doing this thing all the time. Let's like start doing the other things all the time. And eventually those become your new habits. The planning becomes a new habit. The scheduling becomes a new habit. And then when you are planning and scheduling, then it just becomes your new reality. And it's like, well, every day at noon we eat lunch, and or whatever it is, like whatever people out there are struggling with. Because I know the number one thing that people struggle with when they move over to a raw diet is eating enough. And when you're on a raw diet, you got to eat more volume because it's lower calorie density. So you got to eat more food. And for most people, that means starting earlier. So if you have to start earlier, get those calories in earlier, make sure that you have adequate fuel for the day. And then, because if you want to end at 5:30, like you need to get all your calories in before that. So you're not, getting them in right before you go to sleep or anything like that.
That's where smoothies are really powerful, because you can get a fair amount of calories in a smoothie, and it is a little bit easier on your system because it's already blended. Of course, it's nice to have a smoothie that you need to chew, like our smoothies this morning. Like you have to, get that saliva going. And it's so interesting how our world is set up and how busy our lives are that, and of course, there'll be a lot of people that are like, this is not natural. We aren't really meant to live the way that we're living. And I mean, even though I know we're living longer than we were, hundreds of years ago, our lives are definitely a different level of stress. It's not like, people hundreds of years ago didn't have stress. I mean, there's always stress in our lives, but it's so interesting how much time it takes to be healthy and to really keep your body, like taking care of your body. It's like, it's hours a day, and that has to be fit in somewhere. And there's definitely time, because we spend 15 to maybe 30 minutes scrolling. Certain people aren't creating content, they're scrolling, they're not engaging, they're just consuming the content. And then maybe watching a show or two at night. There's 3 hours, and that 3 hours could be used to plan, prepare some meals, figure out what you're going to have tomorrow. And then, of course, another thing I wanted to mention was spending the time to like be with your food, be with the actual process of chewing and relaxing, because sometimes we're just so busy and we're just such a fast pace. We're just shoveling food in, not even chewing it properly. You maybe 3, 4 to 7 bites and you swallow, and then you might have gas and different indigestion, different kind of uncomfortable feeling. But it's just like the new norm. I remember like that's how it was with me. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, I just ate all that and I don't even remember eating it really. Like my head was somewhere else. I wasn't present with my food. I didn't chew it enough because I'm like burping a bunch. And it's so interesting how hard it can be to slow down and take that time to actually, be present with the meal, especially if it's something you prepared. It's so nice. Like I saw someone say like, oh, we all need a personal chef. Man, I know, right? If we could all have a personal chef, like maybe the robots could be, like remember the Jetsons? I don't know if some of you guys remember the Jetsons, like there was the maid, and she'd make the food, and that'd be so cool. But still you have to take a moment to set out, some time to eat and be present with your meal. That's huge too. It's so huge.
And that's a great point too, is like slowing down to chew, because a lot of people will say, well, like, how can I improve my digestion? How can I improve my absorption? The number one top thing that you can do that's completely free is chewing more thoroughly.
Yeah.
Because you expose more surface area of the food, so you get to absorb more nutrition. Your microbiome has more fiber to work on. And it's funny when people will say like, well, I can't digest corn, so corn isn't food for humans, because when I have my bowel movement, I see pieces of corn in my bowel. That means I don't digest corn. And I'm like, no, it just means that you didn't chew your corn, and you had a bite that had a piece that you didn't chew at all and got in there. Like, we don't have teeth in our stomachs. Right? This is where digestion starts. This is the most important part of digestion. There's a reason why we have teeth, and there's a reason why we have saliva, and there's a reason why that is there for us to have proper digestion, better absorption, better gut microbiome, because we can expose all of that surface area of our food, and we get better digestion from it. And not only that, is that we slow down. So chewing your food, you know, putting your fork down between bites and actually chewing it, or chewing it until it's like smoothie consistency, and then swallowing. And it's interesting when you challenge yourself to chew more. Like, I'll challenge people. I'll be like, when you take a bite, chew 80 times, count to 80 every time you chew, right? And obviously that's not like the normal amount, but the reason I say 80 is to really give you a good contrast as to when your body like naturally wants to swallow. That natural desire to swallow is based on habit. It's not the natural time your body wants to swallow. That's the habitual time that you do usually swallow. So if you count and you're like 5 to 7 bites and then you feel like swallowing, that means that that's the habit swallow time. But then if you like kind of like challenge yourself to do more, to chew more, whatever, then you notice how it turns into that mushy texture. And also the flavor changes too. It gets sweeter because it's being digested already by the amylase in your saliva. So it can change. It can be a little bit sweeter. And then when you swallow it, then with time, the longer you chew, the more your habit changes. So then your natural swallow mechanism starts at around 20 chews or whatever. So we have to train ourselves, because we've already trained ourselves to swallow at 5, right? Now we have to train ourselves to swallow at 20. But that takes time, just like anything, right? It takes time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Caroline says, I have to eat in the car whilst driving, or I don't eat for the whole day. My job doesn't give breaks. That's a challenging one. And I mean, jobs legally have to give breaks. So that's interesting there. But I would, I mean, if that's the only time you can eat, obviously that's better than not eating and not fueling yourself and not getting that nutrition in. So that's good that at least you have that. But yeah, like somehow finding a way to get those calories in, whether it has to be like bulked in the morning or you find a way to sneak it in there somehow. Yeah, it's challenging when, you know, employers don't value the fact that their employees need fuel.
Yeah.
And, you know, they don't give breaks, or they don't, you know, allow you to have a moment. Like when I was working at the natural health store, I worked in the back room. And they didn't really allow food in there, but I talked to my manager and I was like, I need to eat. Otherwise I'm not going to be able to function properly. And they allowed me to have food in the back. So that was really nice. But yeah, it's different for every employer. It's really good to have a conversation with them and explain that, like, you function better. Tell them, you got to tell them what they want to hear, right? You're going to be a better employee. You're going to be, you know, all of this stuff. And maybe they'll be more likely to give you a little extra time. But that's definitely challenging. And sometimes too, people will eat, say they have their break at noon or whatever, and then they're at work until 5 or 6 o'clock. Then they drive home. They have to stop off at the grocery store. They have to pick up the kids. They have to run an errand or whatever. They don't get home until 7:30 or 8. They haven't eaten in 8 hours. And that's a long period of time. And there's a reason why dinner is such a challenging time for so many people, because they go too long without eating something. So like what I would recommend for people in those situations is to try to have a snack, like the bag of clementines or some grapes or something that you've prepared that you can eat as soon as you're done work in the car, before you run your errands, before you go get your kids, before whatever. So at least you have some kind of fuel to sustain you until you are able to have your final meal. But it's challenging. We got to fit it in, and we got to prioritize, because if we don't put ourselves first, it teaches everybody else that we are second.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's where something like a chia pudding, or, you know, having those snacks, the fruit snacks, the celery and the dates, you know, a box of cherry tomatoes, something to munch on while you're driving, grapes, those kinds of things, those can be good.
You can even vacuum blend a smoothie in
Yeah.
advance and have a smoothie vacuumed so it's like, it stays fresher, less
Yeah.
oxidation. Yep.
Then, you're not having to sit in the car. Say you got off work and you're sitting there like, I need to eat a little bit more salad. You make yourself another little salad. Because sometimes I would bring a salad to work and I'm like, this is a little big. Like I'm not as hungry because, maybe just for whatever reason, it wasn't as hungry. So I'd have a little bit left over and I could eat it after I got off work, sitting in the car before I even drove anywhere. Because I feel like that's also another really big pitfall for people is they're so hungry. Maybe they haven't eaten since breakfast because lunch, it was crunch time, whether they're working, at a 9 to 5 brick and mortar place or they're working at home, maybe you skip it. And if it, breakfast, didn't have it, you had your breakfast at 8 or 9 and then it's like 4 or 5 now, right there again, you're like so many hours in between the meals. And then, that changes your metabolic rate. Your metabolism is a little wonky because, you haven't been putting food in there. I know we often say too, it's like, it's almost a full-time job taking care of the body, like,
Is.
Going from hygiene, right? Like taking care of yourself, like lotion, skin routine, brushing and flossing your teeth, especially after meals, especially eating like raw food. We have lots of different fibers and stuff that can get stuck. Gosh, I know. And then, exercise, spending some time to just sit quietly and just breathe, getting into the breath, maybe, do a little yin yoga at night to really calm the parasympathetic nervous system before you go to sleep. All these things take time, and there is time, but it's interesting because like you and I, we've both been like super on point at certain points within our life, and it's a constant balance of trying to keep things on point. But when we're super on point, it's interesting how fast the day goes. We're like, oh my gosh, it's already that time again. Like we need to do this. Like there's not very many hours in the day, so that's where planning is like, man, if we plan it in and then you start to, it's just natural. It's just this natural thing. You're not chewing 5 times now. Now you're chewing 20 times.
Yeah.
And, you're not scrolling. You're actually like sitting there, maybe listening to a little bit of mellow music or something and really spending some time.
Are you doing one of the meditations from our meditation course?
Yeah, right. Right, exactly. Like, because it's interesting. It's so easy to just be like shoveling in food, but you're scrolling at the same time, and then it's time to go back to work, not really fully present and not chewing properly, more gassy, more bloated, and a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, we got some stuff in here. Simply Angela says, oh, I just had chia pudding today for the first time. I use plant milk though. What do you guys use? Plant milk. You can make your own raw. Nate's actually going to show that tomorrow morning on his live at 9 a.m. PST. So you're going to want to join in and see how he makes the plant milk. So you can use that. Yoda Beast is in the chat.
Hey,
he said, prepare to
what up,
wrap
Chris?
right now.
Oh, he's preparing to wrap right now. Good man.
Yep. That's awesome. Noi, our lovely Noi, who's in the community, says, you guys are amazing, as are you.
Thanks, Noi.
We've got Graham. He's in the community too. He says, hey guys, I'm in your community school group. I'm doing the new 52 to a New You book. Would you recommend you do food shop at the end of the week for the next week ahead, or is it best to buy fresh each day? You are the one who buys most of the food. So. Yeah,
that's a great question. Hey, good to see you, Graham, in the group. I'll have to reach out to you, man. What we'll do is we'll shop a couple times a week. Not necessarily every day. That can be a bit much. I mean, if that's something that you can do and it fits into your schedule, then, of course, that might be pretty cool. You could re-up stuff if you don't have a lot of space to keep food at home. But really, like 2 times a week, I feel like we could really dial it in. I mean, if we were really set, and we could probably get by with 1 grocery shopping trip a week, because, it's not like we're completely emptying our fridge. Like, oh my gosh, we have nothing in there. We have to do another shopping trip. So not to stress out on that, or, because I know how fast paced our lives are. I feel like putting, you know, that kind of stress on can be a bit much as far as like shopping every day. We like to do Tuesdays, and then, you know, maybe if we absolutely need something, we'll go during the week. But then again, maybe on the weekend. I did go yesterday.
Box. We also get the box on Thursdays too,
Right.
which is the delivered
Yeah.
box. So that kind of is like our second shopping trip in a way.
Right. That's true. Yeah, we get the box, which is, you know, you can order whatever you want. Fresh. It's all fresh veggies, fruits and veg. And they just ship it right to you, send it right to you. So depending on where you are in your area, maybe there's something like that could be offered. That is pretty cool. But that's awesome that you're going through 52 to a New You. That's a powerful book, man. A super, super amazing book. Something that I feel like we all should be revisiting, even if we've read it before, because there's a lot of really killer takeaways in there. But yeah, twice a week I feel like is pretty good.
Yes.
You can definitely, like romaine lettuce, iceberg lettuce, these sorts of things, celery, carrots, cucumbers, you know, different kinds of fruits, apples, oranges. A lot of that stuff will last a week. So you could get by with once a week, but breaking it up might be kind of nice if you have a little time at night, or maybe you want to make something special. You grab those things at night.
Another bonus tip too is that the more often you shop, the less money you end up spending, because, you know, you're getting only what you need for like 2 or 3 days. And you're not like, oh, I might have that, or because I mean, there's been times where we're like, oh, let's get this and this. I think we're gonna eat it, and then, you know.
Right.
But yeah, another thing I wanted to mention for Graham and anyone who is in the school community or who wants to join the school community, if you want to join the school community, send me a DM or Nate a DM and we can get you the link to join in. But in the school community, we just did a live Zoom hangout session, and the replay is in the community in the Zoom hangout session in the replay area, where we talked about shopping. It was like a whole hour and some time, and Nate went shopping. He went to Winco and to 99 Ranch. So if you want to watch that live, that's in the community as well. So Graham, I highly recommend you go check that out, because we talked all about timing and when to shop and, you know, where we like to shop and all that good stuff. We talked about food storage as well. So yeah, it's a good one. So I highly recommend that.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, I think that's time. I've got a live in like 18 minutes with Dr. Carrie Henneman. So, Nate, you are amazing because you're my husband.
You too, babe.
But yes, please, everybody, go grab the bundle. It's running right now until March 10th. This is the Vegan Health Bundle. Nate and I have contributed 8 things to this bundle. We have the Align and Awaken Affirmation Meditation Challenge. Nate's brand new smoothie ebook is in there. It's almost 350 pages. We've got the almost 300-page Tales from the Tailgate ebook. That's our raw travel ebook with over 100 recipes in there that we've taken traveling over the years. We've got the burger book. There's 144 recipes in there. Make It Raw Volume 3 that I wrote with Chef AJ. We've got Meal Plan Volume 3. Oh my gosh, Holiday Menu 3, and our food prep class, access to watch that. So all of that you just pay $49 and you get all of that plus all the content from all the other creators. There's 83 things to download, valued at nearly $5,600, and you only pay $49, but it only lasts until March 10th. So click the link in either of our bios and go get the bundle and enjoy all the contents in there. It's such a great combination of things.
Massive. Awesome, babe. I love you.
I love you. I love you. And
guys.
I love everyone in here. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Mwah. We'll see you in 15 minutes for another live. Bye.